The kiss deepened. His hand slid down my back, pulling me tightly against his body. My whole body was shaking. I had never been touched like that, hungrily, carefully, with an urgency that told me he had been waiting for this as much as I had. At that instant, the world around disappeared. There was no more school, morals, rules, just the sound of our panting breaths, his eyes fixed on mine, and the taste of that forbidden moment. And that's where it all begins. Hello, my name is Julia. I'm 24 years old. I study literature at a public university, one of those where you fight hard to get in and, later, even harder to stay there. I've always been passionate about books, but it wasn't the content of the classes that made me arrive early and leave last. I knew there was something wrong with that look. A teacher shouldn't look at a student like that, but he did, as if he were undressing me with his eyes, as if he were saying, "Stay," without even opening his mouth. And I stayed. And what happened between those four walls was etched into my skin forever. Everyone has been attracted to someone they shouldn't have been. But not even in my wildest thoughts did I imagine that he would reciprocate. He was my teacher, cold, elegant, married, the kind of man who seemed unattainable. But that afternoon, after class, he locked the door. I remember the dry sound of the key turning in the lock. I remember the way he leaned against the table, watching me silently. My heart was beating so hard, I thought he could hear it. "Do you know why you're here?" he asked. I should have left. I should have said no. But my mouth was dry, my body was hot, and for the first time, I wanted a man to break all the rules for me. And it broke. He was different from the very beginning. Not because of the content, because of the silence, because of the way he walked around the room with his hands in his pockets, as if he knew more than he was willing to say. And most of all, because of the look in his eyes. That look that didn't pass straight through me like it did with the other students. It stopped. It weighed. It almost burned. At first, I thought it was all in my head, but it became impossible to ignore. Every time I answered a question, he would praise my reasoning, with a half smile on his lips. But it wasn't just any smile. It was an invitation, veiled, dangerous. One time we were discussing a passage by Clarice Lispector, and he read it out loud. She knew that the forbidden tasted like blood and honey. When he finished his sentence, his eyes met mine, and they stayed there, still, for too many seconds. My body reacted before my mind. A shiver ran down my spine. The room was full, but it felt like only the two of us existed at that moment. After that class, something changed. He started calling me by name, even when I didn't raise my hand. He would walk too close to my desk, and sometimes he would touch me, lightly, accidental, but I can feel the touch for hours. One day, he waited for everyone to leave. I was absent-mindedly putting away my notebooks when I heard the door close behind the last student. I thought he was going to leave too, but no. He stood there, leaning against the board, watching me. "Julia," he said softly, as if he were testing the sound of my name. I froze. "You take literature seriously. I can see it in your eyes." My hands were shaking. I tried to hide it, hurriedly stuffing my books into my backpack. But he came closer, slowly, like someone who was in no hurry. Like someone who already knows the answer but wants to hear it from you anyway. "Do you like intense words, Julia?" The air grew heavier. I knew that this was a turning point. If I said no, maybe it would all die there. But I said yes. And what happened next? You already know where it took us. The next week, I started avoiding him. He arrived at the last minute. He left before the bell. He avoided looking at others. He avoided touching others. He avoided everything. But it was useless. Every time he passed by, my body burned. And I felt it. I felt like he knew. On Friday after class, I received an email. No subject, no signature. Just a time, a place, and a sentence. If you come, everything changes. My heart raced. I should ignore it. I should delete it. But at 6 p.m. sharp, there I was, in the hallway of the old wing of the college where no one else passed by. He appeared out of nowhere, leaning against the door of the old archives room. Dark shirt, rolled up sleeves, hungry gaze. I knew you would come, he said in a low, hoarse voice. What if someone sees us here? I asked, almost out of breath. He didn't answer. He just opened the door, grabbed me by the waist, and threw me inside. The room was small. It smelled of dust, wood, and danger. He locked the door. The sound of the key turning made my stomach turn. We can stop now, Julia, he said, leaning his forehead against mine. But if you touch me, I won't be able to stop. My hands were already on his chest, warm, trembling, without asking permission. He groaned softly, as if that touch was a release of something that had been trapped for a long time. His lips brushed mine without actually touching. The heat of his breath, the smell of his skin, the tension in the air. It was like being on the edge of a cliff. And then he kissed me. It wasn't a sweet kiss. It was urgent, hot, full of guilt and surrender. My breath was short. My knees were weak. But his hands held me firmly by the waist, keeping me upright, pulling me closer and closer. My back hit the bookshelf. Books fell to the floor. I didn't even notice. His mouth moved down my neck, and a moan escaped my throat. You are my downfall, he whispered, between one kiss and another. There, in that forgotten room, among old books and broken promises, I lost myself, and he didn't even want to meet me. On Monday, he walked right past me in the hallway. No look, no word, as if nothing had happened. I felt a lump in my throat, a mixture of shame and anger. But that night, in my email, only one sentence. If I look at it again, I won't be able to stop. For days we lived like this, desire muffled between public walls, stolen touches on empty staircases, whispers written in the dark. But the silence began to scream. A colleague commented, "The teacher seems to really like your questions, doesn't he?" He smiled, mischief in his eyes. I pretended not to understand, but my blood ran cold. And then came the looks, from colleagues, from employees, even from the coordinator. The classroom was no longer safe. Any extra word, any exchange of glances could blow everything up. Even so, he called me again. Same room, same key, same voltage. But that night, something was different. His hands were more eager. His kisses were faster, as if he knew time was running out. In the middle of the kiss, he stopped. He rested his forehead against mine and whispered, "They are suspicious." "And you are afraid?" I asked. He held my face tightly, his eyes burning. "I'm terrified of losing what we have." I remained silent, because so did I. But the truth is, what we had was on the verge of falling apart, and that night, his scent still burning on my skin. We were no longer hiding a secret, and we were being watched. That morning, everything seemed normal. Cloudy sky, bitter coffee, contemporary poetry class. But my stomach knew. Even before it happened, something inside me already heard. In the middle of class, the door opened. It was the coordinator. With her were two people I had never seen before. Suits, briefcases, their eyes sharp like lathes. "Professor Ricardo, please, we need you to come with us." The entire room fell silent. He hesitated. He looked at me. It was quick, almost imperceptible, but I saw it, and so did they. The class ended without anyone saying anything, but when I got up to leave, I felt everyone's eyes on me. In the hallway, two colleagues whispered. It was obvious, right? Julia was never good at hiding it. That afternoon, he did not respond to my messages. That night, my email returned with an error. The next morning, a circular from the dean's office announced his dismissal due to investigation of inappropriate conduct with a student. My name wasn't on the paper, but it was in the looks, between the lines, in the crooked smiles of those who always wait for others to fall. I was called to testify. They asked me questions like blades. Did he coerce you? Was there physical relations? Do you have any proof? My mouth said no, but my skin still said yes. On the way out, I ran into his wife in the parking lot. Yes, she knew. She didn't say a word. She just looked me up and down with a mixture of contempt and pity, and she left. There, alone in that empty courtyard, I finally understood. We always think we're in control until the world finds out how we feel. He disappeared. From the campus, from the halls, from my life. No message, no explanation. Just absence. The days became a silent torture. The class that used to be his was now taught by a faceless substitute. The words seemed hollow. Literature lost its taste. The study group was canceled. My classmates avoided me. Even my best friend started responding coldly. I don't want to get involved in this, Julia. You were the one who chose. But was it really? I didn't choose to fall in love. I didn't choose those eyes undressing me. I just stayed. And now I was left with emptiness. I spent weeks going around campus like a ghost, staring at the classroom door like someone waiting for a miracle. Until one day, while printing a paper at the library, I received a notification. Message from Ricardo. My fingers were shaking. My heart was pounding. I opened the message. I can't go back, but I never stopped thinking about you. You were the truest part of my life, and the biggest mistake. Pardon me. I leaned my forehead against the library wall and cried, right there, among the shelves of books and made-up stories, because mine was over for good. And in that moment, I understood. Not every love becomes a love story. Some loves become scars that we learn to carry in silence. Today marks 1 year. 1 year since the kiss, since the mistake, since the abyss. The scar remains, not visible, but present every time the silence gets too loud. Ricardo never wrote again. Neither did I. The words between us remain suspended in the space that will never be filled. I almost dropped out of college. I almost dropped out of everything. But something inside me told me that I couldn't let that story define me. I went back to school. I changed classes. I grew my hair out. I deleted our photos, our messages, our promises. But there's one thing I couldn't erase, and I don't even want to. The way he looked at me, that first time, like I was something dangerous and beautiful. At the same time, there are people who come into our lives to stay. Others come into our lives to destroy everything we thought we knew about ourselves. And there are loves that are not made to last. They are made to leave a mark. I'm not the same Julia anymore. I never will be again. But for the first time in a long time, I look in the mirror and I don't just feel pain. I feel life. I feel history. And I know that, as difficult as it was to turn this page, the next one has already started. Maybe you've never kissed your teacher. But what about that married guy who looked at you like you were the last woman on earth? What about that untimely text? That touch that seemed innocent, but made your whole body react? Everyone has come too close to the edge. Everyone has been tempted to cross the line. And sometimes we do. Not because we want to make a mistake, but because we want to feel. To feel that we are still alive. To feel that someone saw something in you that even you didn't see in yourself anymore. If you've ever experienced something like this, if you've ever felt this fire, this pain, this guilt, write "I understand," Julia, in the comments. You are not alone. And if this story touched you in any way, shares with someone who also carries a secret. Maybe she needs to hear that it is possible to move on, even if your soul is in pieces.